You're watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. I'm Scott Veatch. I'm your host, and on this program we'll be discussing topics of interest for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. We hope that you will subscribe to the channel and you'll hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new program. And now, this is Once Again. My guest is Nancy Norton. She is with the Norton Law Office in Jackson, Wyoming. She's been an attorney for 30 years. She specializes in estate planning and elder law matters. We're going to be talking about kind of where to begin if the family gets a dementia diagnosis and comes to see you, Nancy. Thanks so much for being with us.
The pleasure.
Want to start off with a disclaimer of sorts that the matters that we're going to be talking about today, we can call them directions or suggestions, but certainly if you have questions about legal matters, we recommend that you seek legal advice in your area, because certainly we know we have out-of-state viewers, and laws can vary from state to state. So that is our recommendation. How is that? Is that a good disclaimer?
Great, thank you.
Let's start from the beginning. Let's say a family, God forbid, receives a dementia diagnosis for a family member, and they come to you with that deer in the headlights look, and they say, Nancy, where do I start? What do I need to know? Where do you begin?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question. I think the first thing I would ask is whether there was any planning done prior to them coming to see me. And if there was, I would want to look at those documents to make sure they address the specific situation of somebody with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. And then we would talk about what that diagnosis looks like. And importantly, I think the Alzheimer's diagnosis can be a journey for many people, and it can go on for years. And so there might be different stages within that time span where the loved one who's got the diagnosis is going to want certain types of treatment, especially towards the end.
When
So,
when my wife was diagnosed back in 2007, I had an attorney friend who gave me some excellent advice, and the first thing was to secure power of attorney, and that was in Missouri. So when we moved to Wyoming, one of the first questions that I had was, is that document still good when you change residence from state to state? Are there differences? Is that something we need to be
yeah,
concerned
no,
about?
that is a good concern because every state has their own laws when it comes to powers of attorney. In Wyoming, we've adopted the Uniform Power of Attorney Act, as have some other states, but not every state has taken those uniform laws in whole cloth. They may be modified. But generally speaking, if you have a power of attorney for finances or healthcare, it
Mhm.
will be recognized in another state. But there might be a good reason to visit with an attorney to make sure that's the case, because some of the laws may in fact be different. And so maybe the general intent of the document would be fine, but there could be some provisions an attorney may want to add or modify.
When we talk about power of attorney, or we talk about estate planning, is one more important than the other? Should one be considered first, or can they be done simultaneously?
Yeah, I think they're generally done together. That's how I talk to my clients. We talk about everything. But I think with a diagnosis of dementia in particular, I would say the power of attorney for healthcare in the living will and a HIPAA release would be a priority. And then a power of attorney for finances. I would put those ahead of a will or even a trust.
And those are not complicated documents, right? It's usually a pretty simple procedure.
Well, yes and no.
I'll ask you, I should have rephrased it this way. Is that a simple procedure?
Yeah, so you can certainly get powers of attorney documents off the internet or other places. I know our local hospital has a power of attorney they like people to sign before an operation,
Mm-hmm.
but those tend not to really address some of the specifics that a person who has a dementia diagnosis may need. And I'll give you an example. Say a power of attorney for finances, that power of attorney should have certain provisions in it, such as the ability for the agent to be able to do some planning for government benefits,
And
such
when you talk
as
about the agent, you mean?
the agent is the person who has been given the authority
Right.
by the person making the power of attorney to act on their behalf. And
Okay.
so these documents can be strictly limited or they can be very broad. And I think for a person with a dementia diagnosis, it's probably good to have it more on the broad side of things because during that dementia or Alzheimer's journey, um, we're not really sure when the person is not going to have, quote, the capacity to make decisions. And I can talk about capacity in a little bit more detail as well. But for example, like I was saying, you'd want the agent to be able to do some gifting if that was a strategy to help them with government benefits. You'd want to make sure if they were married that their spouse could deal with their primary residence or you know uh, do things that may come down the line, and in particular applying for Medicaid if that was ever
Hmm.
needed, if the person with dementia ultimately had to go into a long-term care facility.
Talking about the agent again, let me just come back and ask you, is that always a spouse? Can it be an adult child? Can it be a partner, a life partner? How does that work?
Yeah, so that person typically is a spouse, but when I meet with my clients, I really like to have a conversation around, well, who's the best person for this? Because not everybody has the life experience or the skill set to be an agent, especially on the healthcare side when it comes to uh, making really tough decisions. If that agent doesn't want a person's life to end, will they be able to follow the instructions of somebody who says, gee, I don't want um, hydration, I don't want nutrition, I don't want medicine. So there's a lot that goes into being an agent. And sometimes if it's just based on status as a family member, that may not be the best choice.
Hmm. Are you familiar with the POLST document, the provider's order for, let's see, provider's order for life-sustaining treatment, if I have that
Yes.
right? Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it seems to me that's important, but that's not necessarily like a document you need to see professional help to draw up.
Yeah. So it's not a legal document, it's a medical order. And so it's meant to sort of facilitate end of life care if you ever found yourself in that situation. So it's generally people use it when they have a terminal illness and they know the end is coming soon. And they can meet with their physician and go through the questions. And the questions have to do with do not resuscitate,
Mhm.
what happens if my heart stops? What happens if I stop breathing? What type of emergency care would you want? And it gives you the ability to say, I do not want these things. And that's akin somewhat to, say, a living will, which is sometimes incorporated into a healthcare power of attorney, where somebody can say, I don't want certain life sustaining treatments if it's expected that I will die within the next 6 months.
Mhm. And the agent is someone who can complete this document on behalf of the patient, correct?
No.
Incorrect.
So,
And
so,
I say that because I was able to do that for my wife.
oh, okay. Okay. Well, the way it normally works is anyone who's an adult and has capacity, and I'll explain what that means,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
can give permission or legal authority to their agent to do certain things for them. And it usually, after you have the conversation about, well, who's an appropriate agent, then the document will specify specifically what the person can do, what the agent can do, excuse me. So in order to even contemplate making a power of attorney, the principal or the person giving the legal authority to the agent has to have capacity. And capacity is basically the ability to understand and process information and make a decision and then communicate that decision. So that's just generally how it works. But with respect to powers of attorney, it's a little bit of a different standard than, say, a will. And when you're talking about making powers of attorney for healthcare or for finances, the person really has to have the ability, sufficient mental ability to understand in a reasonable way the nature and effect of any decisions they're going to make. So the thing I want to stress about capacity, though, is even if somebody has a horrible diagnosis and it's possible or likely that they're going to lose capacity, they should still seek out an elder law attorney, because that attorney may be able to help them prior to them losing capacity. So they can make specific decisions about their illness in the course of the illness while they have capacity. And even if their impairment mentally is such that maybe every single minute of every single day they don't have capacity, they can still make legal documents. And so that is a really important assessment that an attorney would make when meeting with the person who has the diagnosis.
And that the word capacity, that was the operative word in my case, because by the time that I was familiar with the post document, my wife was already in the nursing home, and her condition was such that she was beyond the point where she could, make those decisions for herself. So I guess that's kind of the exception to what, you were just talking about. Wow, we have so much to talk about, and we've scratched the surface here. We've come to the end of part one. Our guest is Nancy Norton of Norton Law Office in Jackson, Wyoming. And we've been talking about where to start when your family first receives that dementia diagnosis. And if you're just watching this, we've got part two that will be coming up the next time. For now, we're going to wrap it up. Nancy, stay where you are. We'll be right back for the beginning of part two. It's going to wrap it up, and we invite you to stay tuned for part two. You've been watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. We hope, if you haven't done so already, that you'll subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new video. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Scott Veatch. We'll see you again next time.